The Alfa Sud was a revelation when it stunned crowds at the 1971 Turin Motor Show, upstaging the Lamborghini Countach. The low bonnet line, new shape, and when reviewers got their hands on it, the excellent handling and lively yet economical engine seemed like the perfect package. Alfa Romeo was set for success in the 1970s. So why did the Alfa Sud help drive Alfa Romeo to bankruptcy in 1986? And why, despite getting onto 1 million cars, are they so rare to see on the road today? This is the Alfa Romeo Alfa Sud story. Before we get started, I'd like to try a new feature I like to call What's Under the Cover? I've been walking past this car for a couple of years now, and only now have I decided to look under the cover to find out just what it is. Have a guess now, and I'll tell you the answer at the end of the video. Alfa Romeo is a historic company founded in 1910, and since its early days it was associated with the northern Italian city of Milan. In the 1930s, they fell on hard times and were bailed out by the government. After the war, Alfa remained firmly under government ownership, and although they would chart their own success as a successful motorsports team that helped fuel demand for their large premium cars, any future funding was always looked upon favourably if it could help whatever cause the government had a passion for. In the late 1960s, the passion du jour was correcting the disparity of wealth between the north and the relatively poor south. With the Italian economy doing well, Alfa's president wanted to expand into the mainstream car market and struck on the idea of building a new factory, not near their current factories in the north, but in the south, and specifically in Pomigliano d'Arco near Napoli or Naples. Alfa actually already had a factory there. During the war, they'd supervised the production of Daimler-Benz aircraft engines. The factory was severely damaged during the war, but by 1952, aircraft engine production had resumed. By the early 1960s, Alfa and Renault set up a joint company to sell the Renault 4 under license. The Alfa Romeo R4 was assembled at the Pomigliano factory, allowing Alfa an easy way to expand their range and cash in on the growing Italian economy that was moving up from tiny Fiat 500s into something a little more grown up for their growing families. Alfa had explored building their own small car since the 1950s. They'd created the 750cc Project 1361 that would have been the first transverse-engined front-wheel drive car if it hadn't been axed just before it would have sold like hotcakes in the wake of the 1956 Suez fuel crisis. They tried again with the Alfa Romeo Tipo 103 in 1960, another car that unfortunately didn't get past the prototype stage. So, with the Italian government looking favourably at investment in the south of Italy, Alfa saw an opportunity to expand their range. After many proposals, the Alfa Sud project was born, a name that would proclaim the car's origins, literally meaning Alfa South. Design of both the car and the factory began in parallel in 1967, and factory construction began a year later. The mechanicals would be designed by Alfa Romeo's engineers in the north, and it would be a departure as it was Alfa's first front-wheel drive car. The lead designer would be Rudolf Husker, fresh from helping design the Fiat 124 and 128. In fact, Fiat had been annoyed about the whole Alfa Sud project, and not just because Rudolf Husker might use some of their design tricks. They saw it as the government sponsoring a competitor to poach some of their market. The Alfa Sud design team decided the car should be easy to maintain, but have the fun, sporty handling that customers wanted from an Alfa Romeo. It would be easy to stop as well, with disc brakes on all four wheels, quite a rarity at the time. The project would be well funded, over £2 billion in today's money, and this meant the team could also design a brand new, sporty yet economical engine, the Flat 4 Boxer engine that would be exclusive to the new car and would allow a low bonnet line and lower centre of gravity that helped with the handling. Work progressed well and development was kept on a tight rein to ensure it would be delivered on time. Like many Italian cars of the period, the body style was given over to an outside company, in this case Giorgetto Giugiaro from Italdesign. He created a shape that looked a little bit like the Austin Allegro that would launch a year later than the Alfa Sud. Unlike the Allegro, although it might look like a hatchback, the Alfa Sud was a saloon. What the development team couldn't control was factory construction, and that was delayed due to many strikes. However, the factory was completed just 3 months late in April of 1972, 4 years to the month after work had begun. The Alfa Sud made its debut at the Turin Motor Show in 1971, where it stole the show. To lay out Alfa's intentions for its new car, they also presented the Caimano Coupe, a concept based on the same Alfa Sud chassis, using the same Boxer engine and with a suitably futuristic dashboard. The whole windscreen opened up to allow both the driver and passenger to get in, but when lowered, that same windscreen was claustrophobically close to your head whilst driving. The Caimano might not have gone into production, but Alfa Sud production started ramping up in 1972, and soon the automotive press got their hands on the new car. They enthused over its new fashionable style, the solid, predictable handling, and great performance from the raspy 1.2 litre engine. Inside, it was Spartan but comfortable with a quiet ride, and thanks to the front-wheel drive, excellent interior space. Suddenly, the prospect of 2.4 children didn't mean giving up the performance you'd come to expect from your pocket sports car, and you'd have enough room in the boot for the pram. But the Alfa Sud wasn't cheap, at least compared to the competition, and constant strikes at the Pomigliano factory kept supplies to a trickle. This was likely to just drive up demand for a car that, despite being expensive, was the best car in its class, and this would likely help increase the cachet of the Alfa Romeo brand. But one thing you need to complete this strategy is rock-solid quality, and this is where it all went wrong. The new factory was staffed by workers who'd only assembled Renault parts, not built a complete car from scratch, and some workers hadn't even done that. Mistakes were made, and this, coupled with the new design, meant the Alfa Sud was unreliable. Bad worker relations, which led to frequent strikes, didn't help rectify the problems. But the larger problem with the Alfa Sud was rust, due in part to unprotected storage. Raw steel was left out in the rain due to constant strikes. When cars were being built, the completed bodies had to be moved to a separate building to be painted, even if it was raining. But the main reason for rust was the low-quality Soviet steel the Italians received in payment for the Soviets' use of Fiat's car designs. This meant that inadvertently Fiat were lowering the quality of Alfa Romeo's cars. With little rust proofing, customers could end up with rust just a few months after taking ownership. Alfa rushed through a quick fix. All box sections were filled with a special synthetic foam, but this merely absorbed the moisture, trapping it and making the problem even worse. Rust would go on to plague the Alfa Sud and Alfa's reputation for years to come, but initially, at least, sales looked good, and although the base car had a lively engine, in 1973 Alfa would introduce the more powerful TI or Touring International model. Where the base Alfa Sud was a 4-door, the TI would be a 2-door. Exterior and interior flourishes differentiated it from the base model, such as 4 round headlights. The engine got a longer stroke, new camshafts, and a twin-choke carburettor to increase output by 5 horsepower. With a new 5-speed gearbox, the 0 to 60 time was brought down to just 12.6 seconds. Trim levels improved in 1974 with the SE, and the following year the Alfa Sud L. Some had criticised the low-spec interior, so Alfa added cloth seats, headrests, a padded dashboard with glove compartment and an optional tachometer. To show off the car's handling and performance, the Alfa Sud Trophy Racing Series in the mid to late 70s would be held throughout Europe. The sporty Alfa Sud became more practical with the Alfa Sud Giardinetta. This had been the pet project of Rudolf Husker and Giorgetto Giugiaro, and they had high hopes for its success. The loading area was equipped with elegant fake wood, well, it was the 1970s, and the practical tailgate allowed acres of storage space, but it was about as popular as the Allegro estate, launched the same year, with sales never going above 2% of saloon sales. It seems Italians equated estate cars with work vehicles, and with only 3 doors, ironically, rear access was limited. Alfa would attempt to combat the rising rust concerns with better rust proofing in 1975, which would slow the onset of rust, but it didn't get to the root of the problem, and Alfa Sud rust would still be a big problem. Alfa's attitude was, never mind about silly issues like rust, look at our new models. They launched the stylish new Alfa Sud Sprint in 1976. The new sports coupe had been planned since the conception of the Alfa Sud in 1968 as a replacement for the GT 1300 Junior, and was again styled by Giugiaro. It took the Alfa Sud's rounded shape and squared it off, taking the car to the next level. Where the Alfa Sud was going toe-to-toe with Volkswagen's new Golf, the Sprint's 3-door shape seemed to compete with the Scirocco, also styled by Giugiaro, although unlike the Scirocco, the rear seats of the Alfa Sud Sprint didn't fold down. The Boxer engine became a 1.3 litre and got the car over 100 miles an hour for the first time, and the engine was also available on the regular Alfa Sud TI. Alfa were clearly so proud of their car's sporting credentials, they added the fabled 4-leaf clover badge, a symbol that went back to Alfa's early days of motorsports, where driver Ugo Sivocci painted one on his car to break his long streak of bad luck. The lucky charm worked, and Alfa still carries it on their racing cars today. Sales of the Alfa Sud continued to be steady when Alfa launched the second series in 1977. Calling it a new generation car was a bit of marketing hyperbole, as the updates amounted to a few trim changes both inside and out. The unloved Giardinetta was also updated and continued to be just as unloved. Despite continuing strikes at the Pomigliano factory that meant on average a fifth of the workers were absent, sales continued to be strong throughout the 1970s. Sales of the Alfa Sud Sprint had begun slowly, but picked up in 1978 with interior and exterior updates, plus a larger 1.5 litre engine. The Alfa Sud again got the same uprated engine, plus a slightly larger 1.3 litre 78 horsepower version, and all models continued to receive interior updates to keep the car looking fresh and competitive with the competition, who were working to match Alfa's all-round package. The Sprint got yet more power just a year later with the Alfa Sud Sprint Veloce. A higher compression ratio increased power to 94 horsepower, finally taking the 0 to 60 time below 10 seconds and on to 109 miles an hour. If you put rust issues to one side for a minute, it came as little surprise when British Car Magazine anointed the Alfa Sud as Car of the Decade in 1980. It was relatively quick, practical, economical, and quite handsome to boot. The only two things that could be held against it were the looks, which by now were 8 years old, and the rust problems. Alfa attempted to address both with the third series Alfa Sud in 1980. But again, it seems Alfa had gone for only small changes, including new plastic bumpers, revised front and rear lights, and a new instrument panel inside. The unloved Giardinetta estate was finally axed, being replaced in 1981 with a hatchback, which arguably the Alfa Sud should have been all along. Alfa Suds have been racing since the mid-1970s. The Alfa Sud Sprint would also be entered in various racing events in the late 1970s, and the Sprint Trofeo would become well known in European GT competition. In 1982, Alfa designed the Sprint 6C, destined for Group B rallying. A 158 horsepower V6 engine from the GT-V6 was mid-mounted into a prototype, but Alfa's financial problems and the rapidly evolving pace of Group B development put paid to racing the Sprint 6C in anger. Alfa showed off the ESVAR and SVAR technology demonstrators in 1982. The ESVAR was all about showcasing better fuel economy. The car was 76 kilograms lighter, aerodynamic changes improved the drag coefficient, and the engine efficiency was improved with fuel injection, even switching off 2 cylinders at low load. It all added up to fuel efficiency gains of 20%. The SVAR Alphasud focused on higher body strength and the use of new lighter materials such as aluminium to increase safety. These cars weren't destined for the showroom, as the Alphasud's replacement, the evolutionary Alfa Romeo 33, would appear just 1 year later in 1983, but it helped Alfa improve future cars. The Alphasud Green Cloverleaf and Gold Cloverleaf hot hatches appeared in 1982, almost as closeout specials. Both featured 1.5 litre versions of the venerable Boxer engine. The 5-door Gold Cloverleaf produced 94 horsepower with a 0-60 time under 10 seconds, but the 3-door Green Cloverleaf had the edge with 103 horsepower and a sub 9 second 0-60 time. There was limited Alphasud production in Malta, Malaysia and South Africa, where the car was known as the Alfa Romeo Export GTA. Alphasud production would end in 1983, but the Alphasud Sprint would continue, rebranded as the Alfa Romeo Sprint. As the Alfa Romeo 33 was based on the Alphasud chassis, the updated Sprint benefited from the 33's new front suspension and updated brakes. Outside, the Sprint got larger plastic bumpers along with a side strip. Inside, there were new seats, new steering wheel, along with other minor changes. Sales of the Sprint had always been dwarfed by the Alphasud, and with the body not receiving a styling update, sales were always going to be hard to find in a diminishing sports coupe market. Despite a new model in 1983 and special editions, sales barely ticked upwards before nosediving the following year. Alfa made one more attempt to boost Sprint sales in 1987 with a 1.7 litre version of their 15-year-old Boxer engine. Fuel injection got it to 60 in 8.5 seconds, and uprated front disc brakes helped get it back down to 0, but the market had moved on to hot hatches and production ended in 1989. Not just Alfa Romeo, but all Italian car companies who'd used that cheap Soviet steel were forever tarnished with the stigma of being rust buckets. And as Vauxhall could tell you from its experiences in the 1950s and 60s, bad reputations like that are hard to shake off. This lowered demand for the Alphasud, and what demand there was constrained by constant industrial action that limited supply. Despite all this, the Alphasud and the Alphasud Sprint sold relatively well for low-volume Alfa Romeo, becoming their strongest selling car to that point. When Alphasud production ended, almost 900,000 of them had been sold, and if you add the Alphasud Sprint to the tally, over 1 million cars left the Pomigliano d'Arco factory. But it wasn't enough to save Alfa Romeo, who was sold to Fiat in 1986. The car of the decade was clearly a masterpiece of design. If only production had been firing on all cylinders, who knows how many Alfa Romeo could have sold. Are you ready to find out what's under the cover? Well, you get 1 point if you guessed an open top, probably not much of a stretch from that outline. 2 points if you guessed Alfa Romeo. 3 points if you got it was a mid-80s Alfa Romeo Spider. And I'd be surprised if you got it was a Spider Veloce, but if you did, have another point.